So the study today is Psalm 63. And it really kind of comes at us as if it's a summing up of 61, 62, it seems, right? Because it follows the same pattern. And needless to say, we find David caught in another situation. And this time he's in the desert in desperation. As you're reading through it, was there a word that jumped out at you that can properly describe what he's going through? One, go ahead, everybody got a thought? The word that jumped out to me that we are all faced with is the word pressure. You think he was under a little pressure? I mean, disregarding all the other stuff that he, was going through, with his life on the line and all, he was under a lot of pressure. And as part of our lives, pressure is something that we have to deal with all the time. Right? One writer said that it began as children. He said, 5 years old, you're pressured because of the fact that now you got to go to school. You got to go to school, and not only go to school, but you got to go there, perform, and compete for grades. Right? That's pressure, isn't it?
Peer pressure and everything else.
Yeah. And then once we start rising in school, we join athletic team. That's pressure, isn't it? Because you got to perform. He said that we are pressured to get a job, and then when we get the job, the pressure mounts because we want to get promoted and move up, right?
Yep.
And then we got family pressures, don't we?
There is.
First of all, you're pressured to find a mate.
Oh, Lord.
Right?
That most must be pretty good.
Yeah.
We got the same one.
And then you're pressured to, once you find a mate, to keep the marriage together.
Hallelujah.
He said, then, as your family starts to grow, you are then, hey, how you doing? Good. Then you're worried about how the pressure of raising them right. You want to raise them as godly children in an otherwise challenging world. And then once you get outside of those kinds of things, what about the pressure of the world? I mean, there are problems everywhere, right? And the way things are functioning today, we're all being brought into those worldly problems that we, in the past, never would hear about until the decisions are made and the actions have been taken.
Yeah.
Now we get to ride the whole bus.
I believe there's an element of pressure that I'm personally wrestling with. All of my grandchildren are in the beginning phases of their life. And none of them face an element of pressure that's very much a part of my life. And I'm at the crossroads of trying to decide whether I even want to bring up the subject. And that, when I was their age, my parents said to me, you have double pressure because you're Negro.
Amen.
And you have to do everything better than the white boys. And so when we went to class, it wasn't just getting a good grade, but what did Finkelstein get? They got A's. No, that won't get you either. And my kids don't have that. And my grandchildren don't have that. They do not have that perspective in life. And I'm ambivalent as to whether to even bring it up.
Yeah.
I got a kid in a new workplace where he is a help desk supervisor. His measure of performance is the pleasure of the people who call in their problems.
Okay.
He's one of several help desks. So at the end of the marking period, the boss will decide which help desk supervisor, you know, got the nicest compliments from the, okay. And he explains his job to me, and he explains his workplace to me. So he's in the workplace equivalent of the classroom. And he's the color guy. Okay.
Yeah.
And he sees all of his fellow supervisors as peers, and, you know, my only measure of performance is the, what they call it, the reviews that the customers give. I just want to grab him by the throat and say, no, that is not your. But, you know, it's just, I don't know what anybody else
Yeah.
has had that evaporate from their.
I think we don't stop.
Go ahead.
I think as a parent, grandparent, I think we owe it to our children to have that discussion. I mean, we can make it as positive as possible, because if we just make it negative, they probably won't.
Dismiss it.
But there's reality there, whether we like it or not. There's that white supremacy belief, not reality, but it's belief. And when you were the only fly in the buttermilk, I think you need to be aware that that boss, supervisor, whoever, could have some prejudice. I say could, not necessarily, but I just think it's a reality that we need to deal with our kids.
Yeah. So there's a natural tendency maybe in showing up in your grandkid to try to avoid pressure. I mean, or they operate in a world where the pressure's around them and they don't want to acknowledge it.
Well, they just do enough to get by. They do. They don't stretch it at all. I mean, just, I'm talking
But
personally.
isn't that a grown up kid, but these kids grew up
Yes.
in fully integrated high school,
Yes.
you know, whatever,
Yes.
and they white girls all his life, finally married a black woman, and blah, 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 you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And they just don't see the world.
They don't see it. But did you see an article in the paper that said children today are growing up later than we did?
Later.
In other words, they are not driving cars as early as we did. The sense of responsibility isn't impressed upon them as early as it was for us. It's a different world for them. It doesn't negate our need or obligation to explain to them that this, I tell my kids, I told them the whole time, I said, this is an artificial society in Northern Virginia. This is not the real world. And you try to explain to them. And you know what? They're in their 40s then. They came back and said, you know, I understand now what you were trying to tell us.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
But it takes a while, but we didn't want them to go through what we went through. And so I think we failed them in a way, I really do.
Yeah.
They're too insulated from
They're too
reality.
insulated. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that fits into what we're talking about here, and what David is once again trying to teach us, right? And that is that, as we talked about last week, you don't look at the stuff that's going on in front of you. You know, just because you get a good mark on your employee review doesn't mean that you're out of the woods. You know, there's still things that you have to be concerned about. And David is saying that you have to get your priorities straight. I mean, this whole 63 is looking at that. He's saying you got to get your priorities straight in order for you to avoid the impact, the negative impact that you can realize from pressure. I mean, you think about him. Pressure he was facing was he's fleeing for his life, right? He was feeling disgraced and rejected as the king, and he had no clear image about what his future was going to be. David needed to have things in priority, otherwise he would have lost his mind. I mean, those are the conditions under which people just say, I'm out of here.
You know, when that isolation goes along with that, with his whole process. So that means that he had to have some dependence
Yeah,
in order to make it second by second, sound like second by second.
That's right.
Day by day.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And what he wrote us, you gonna say something?
Well, just otherwise, oftentimes we see in the world that people who don't have God to lean on, unlike David, then they succumb to Satan's
Yeah.
responses to those things. And I'm thinking about suicide, you know, and reverting to drugs and those kind of things.
That's right.
But David didn't need all that artificial stuff.
That's
He
right.
didn't need Satan to solve his problems because he had God to help him work through them.
That's right, that's right. And what he did is he's showing an example. He said, you know, I'm choosing to write a song. In the midst of all my problems out here in the desert, nothing to sustain me, I choose to write a song. And if you notice, he wrote a song and didn't ask for anything, did he? He's not asking for anything. He said, God, all I need you to know is that I'm longing for your presence. I'm longing to be able to praise you. I'm longing for the joy that I get out of remembering what you've already done for me. And I'm longing for our fellowship. Somebody read verses 1 through 4, we'll see that.
O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My body longs for you in a dry and weary land, where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands.
That's beautiful, isn't it? This is a man in a desperate situation, pressure, just unimaginable. You know, first thing out of my mouth would have been, Lord, get me out of here. Right? Send me some help.
Yes.
But he's extolling the virtues that he's understood in the relationship he has with God. 3 movements in Psalm 63. Verses 1 through 4 talks about God, my desire. Verses 5 through 8 talks about God, my delight. 9 through 11 talks about God, my defense. And as we've said over and over again, that's the way David lived. He was totally dependent on his relationship with God. So what is he suggesting in this that ought to be our first priority?
The rock.
Hmm?
The rock.
The rock.
Have faith.
Faith,
Have faith.
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 Okay.
And remember what I've done for you.
Yeah.
I've seen you in the sanctuary. He's seen his power. He's seen what God will do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to go back when you're going through a tough time and remember
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
goodness of God.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So, and I guess in another way of saying, he's telling us, first thing you need to do is seek God. Seek after God. What does that mean? Seek after God.
Reach out, find him, go after him, go relationship with him.
Relationship.
Yeah.
Surrender.
Surrender, right.
Pray, relationship.
In this
Yeah.
particular case, he'll be praising and praying.
Right. I mean, not just to, you know how some of the sports guys do, they point to the sky. That's not the kind of relationship David's talking about. He's talking about you got to have an intimate relationship with God. You know, you have got to have spent some time with it. What does he start? He says, you God are my God. I mean, that's a comment about a pretty strong relationship. It's more than just call his name when I'm in trouble.
I think that the 2 words that in that scripture that sort of draws me so, you know, this resonates to me is that when he talks about my soul,
Mm-hmm.
is thirsting, so he's using something physical to talk about something that's so spiritual. That's pulling everything.
That's right.
I mean, it's just soaking up everything. I think it's so positive. Such a love story.
Yeah.
Such a magnificent love that he's expressing.
That's right, that's right. And when you read it, you get the sense that he's not just talking about something he's heard, right? I mean, let me ask you this question. Is there a difference in the word knowing someone? Is there a difference in that? Are there levels of, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the relationship thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and in this particular case here, I see David as literally having the best relationship that could possibly be, and he knows that he's got a God that he can depend upon,
Yeah.
call upon.
yeah.
Out in the desert, what do you need? You need water, and in this particular case, he needs God. So he's calling him.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's saying that, it has to be more than just, I go to church every,
Yeah,
every
see,
Sunday. And
yeah.
he's saying that you can get a book and read about my life or anybody else's life, and then you can say, oh, I know Luke, or oh, I know Jim,
Yeah.
or I know Gene, but you don't really know him. It's like the president. I can say, I know
Oh, no.
Barack Obama.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I can say, I know Barack Obama because we know his history, right? But I don't know him like, what was the lady that came from Chicago with him?
Yes.
Valerie Garrett.
Valerie Garrett.
Yeah.
I don't know him like Valerie Garrett. Valerie Garrett knows him inside out. David is saying that's the kind of relationship at this stage you need to have with God. And the only way you get that is the same way Valerie got hers. You got to spend time with him. Right?
When I look at it, the things Father says, my soul thirsts, or trying really with her if from work. It's almost as if my desire for you is greater than life itself.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
And, when you get to know somebody like Valerie Jarrett got to know President Obama, and God gets to know us, and we get to know him, you develop trust.
Yes.
He could talk to her
Yeah.
about, I'm sure, pretty much anything that came up on that administrative
That's
level.
right. That's right.
Because he had a relationship.
Yeah.
And they could talk to each other, and the same thing with us in our relationship with God.
That's right.
We can trust him.
That's right.
And we talk to him, he talks to us, whether we want to hear it or not.
Indeed. In many different ways, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With all of what's going on, someone said, God's really talking to us. I said, he talks to us all the time, we just don't listen.
Yeah. That's
I
right.
hear it.
So,
We let the noise interfere.
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's what David is suggesting is keeping him balanced. And what's good for us when we're facing pressure like that is that we have to have that kind of relationship with God where it's intimate. It's intimate because we're seeking God with the understanding that Jesus has already opened the door for us. He's already made it possible. And that all we want to do is just get more. Because David is saying, I thirst for you. Right? He's saying that I don't have the full measure of what you got more of what you've already given me. And that's what he's trying to accomplish here. That's what he's saying to each one of us. We got to know him in such a way that if he's an infinite provider, that we can never be completely filled by all that he has. So we ought to spend as much time as we can with God trying to get more.
Amen.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Amen.
He said, I shall seek you earnestly. My soul thirsts for you. David had the Lord, but it sounds like he wanted more. I mean, that's a great way for us to enter into a dialogue in prayer or otherwise with God, right? Wanting more. Wanting more, not asking necessarily for anything, but wanting more of what it is that he has for us. Socrates had a great example. He was walking through the city, and this young man ran out and screamed to him. He said, "Socrates, can I become your disciple?" And he didn't respond to him. He kept on walking. The young man kept following him, kept asking him, "Can I be your disciple?" And finally Socrates decided he's going to go off into this pond to get away from this kid. And the kid followed him into the pond, asked him again, "Can I be your disciple?" And Socrates grabbed him by the shirt and stuck him under the water. He held him under the water until he was just about to give in, and he let him up. And Socrates said to him, "When you desire truth as much as you seek air right now, you can then be my disciple."
Wow.
That's kind of what God is saying. I mean, that's what we ought to do.
I changed my mind.
And Harvest, that was waterboarding.
That's what David felt like. David was thirsting just that way for more of God. As an expression of how much he wanted to know God. How much do you want to know God? How far would you go to know him? Boy, it's pretty quiet in here.
What price would you pay?
What price would you pay? I mean, that doesn't mean that you go out and jump off a building or anything like that. But in your relationship with God, what's happening when you are in his presence that you could do more of to be further exposed to him and to strengthen the relationship? What could you do?
Or what would you sacrifice? The time that you spend on one thing, you would sacrifice that time to spend quality time building that relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you sacrificing to build that relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you sacrifice it, you're never going to forget it, are you? And it endears that particular situation to you in a very special way.
And obedience to him, sharing the word of him, and you might be just sharing to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you're acknowledging how great he is.
Yeah.
And all the blessings that he has bestowed upon you.
Yeah.
And we should be praying, not because God needs us,
Mhm.
but to acknowledge God that we need you.
Yeah.
And you can't do it enough.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And this place of desperation that David is in, we may not be to that extreme, but there are places in our lives, right, where we are desperate.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's a financial situation or a condition occurring in the family. I can remember a situation with my youngest daughter, where I lay prostrate one night and prayed that, I said, "God, if you fix this, I'll stop running." And he fixed it. The next day. Because that's, and I'll obviously never forget that. That's been a lot of years ago. And that endeared me more to God. I got to receive more nourishment from God out of that experience. And it caused me to want to look for more, if he did it one time, he'll do it again. I guess a real life example what David is going through is, we can look at Richard Nixon, right? Richard Nixon, one day was the leader of the, the strongest country in the world. And the next day, he's a goat. So, and you can only imagine how he felt. I mean, you think about what happened to him. I mean, you feel how empty he must have been, going from the center of attention for the largest country in the world to everybody disliking him, everybody hating him.
That's a long fall. That's a big step
It
down.
wasn't-
Big step.
That one tears you up. I mean, that's
Yeah.
destroys you.
Yeah. And the state of depression it must have put him in. You know.
Yeah, you can't deal with that.
And David's in that same spot. But what is he doing?
Yeah, praise the Lord.
He's praising God.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, it makes it very clear that that this man is in each one of his writings is showing us the importance of a relationship first and foremost in setting our priority with seeking God. What did he give up? Lost his throne, right? Left all of his possessions and his wives behind. Had his son, who, when you read in Samuel, he loved his son. Now he's trying to kill him. In spite of his situation, David wasn't seeking things to satisfy his condition. He wasn't praying, Lord, give me back my palace, and give me back my kingdom. That was of no importance to him. Can we relate to that? I find it difficult, saying in my humanness that first stop would be trying to get myself squared away. I mean, that's where we normally go, isn't it? Some of us have grown to the place to where we can suppress that feeling. It'll start and then we'll suppress it and get ourselves right. But the first instinct is to try to make it go away. Second thing that we talked about in this passage was that God is his delight. Somebody read 5-8.
I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. They will go down to the depths of the earth. Keep on reading.
Through 8.
Through 8? Okay, I'm there. I cling to you is the last one. Your right hand upholds me.
Mm-hmm. Now that paints a picture that, and I want to ask you this question about the picture. What does the person seeking God looks like? What do they look like? I mean, what would you, how would you describe a person seeking God? Yes, sir.
A person in need.
In need, okay.
Thirsty. Wanting.
Bedraggled.
Okay. The dragon.
In pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lost.
Good word. Yeah. That's right.
Help me out, somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
She said you're doing real good.
Know what you're talking
But I like that bedraggled.
Yeah, I like that.
Learning something, God.
And the crowd said, say what? His first statement was, I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. It seems like he's saying, you know, I will have an inner satisfaction. So it sounds like a person seeking God has something already satisfied inside of them as a result of their relationship with God, right? It's not saying that he's complacent, that he's just going to sit and wait for manna to drop down from heaven. But he's saying, I'm satisfied. You know, I may not make it out of this, but if I don't, I'll die satisfied. That's awesome, isn't it? And with this richest of foods, he's saying, you know, I'm like a man that just had a great meal. In spite of what you see, I feel like a man that just had a great meal, an expensive meal. The other thing that one writer said that you can find in a person seeking God is that they have an inner joy. You ever seen those folks that going through stuff and they just as happy? You know, it's like they're oblivious to what's going on around them. They used to confuse me until, you know, till you got to that place where your relationship with God explained it all. Yeah, it's like the Holy Spirit. When you started reading the Bible early on, it didn't make any sense to you, right? And the Holy Spirit began to work on you, and the words began to come alive and start to make sense.
This reminds me of Paul in Philippians when he says, I've learned to be content.
Yes.
And I think this parallels that in some ways.
Yeah.
That whatever I'm going through,
Yeah.
and contentment is not natural for us.
That's right.
You have to learn to be content with whatever's going on in your life.
Yeah.
And you recognize that God has the control anyway. But I think it's reassuring.
Yeah. Yeah. It sure is. It sure is.
I think it shows a level of tenacity. I mean, even in the business world, I've seen people, and I think maybe this is where they come from. When
Okay.
they lead with a level of tenacity when things happen. Most of us be like, you run into a bump, you stop. Oh, I got to make it just. They just go right through. Oh, okay. And that happened. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. It's that comfort.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just because they are centered and focused on.
That's right. That God's gonna work it out.
God's gonna work it out. I just take this move. I just go here. Just go
Yeah.
here.
And the satisfaction generates the feeling of just enough. You know, he talked about the food that is being fed. Sometimes when we think you have this food that you're stuffed, you've eaten so much you're stuffed. And so now you're uncomfortable, but he's talking about eating just enough of the right food so that there is that comfort, that peace that he has as a
Yeah.
result of, you know,
And I think that comes along with the reality of what God has done, knowing that he will do. And it doesn't matter how small the issue is or how large the issue is, we know that God can do. Sunday, I get home and I have no idea where my wallet is. I mean, literally, I have no idea. And, I started being questioned when it was the last time I saw and literally, I thought, when I parked Sunday, I thought that my Bible and Sunday school book were in the back of the car. And I thought, sure, I left my wallet in the back of the car. So obviously I took everything out. I took everything out. But I approached it with the thought process, God, I know that you're going to help me find my wallet. Well, I took everything out and there was no wallet. And I looked through the entire car and there was no wallet. So, I'm still saying, Lord, I don't know whether you're going to do it today, but I know you're going to do it. But I know you're going to do it. And then, Satan says, well, you got to drive, so you don't have a driver's license, blah, blah. And it's like, well, whatever, I'm going to drive wherever I need to drive. Sunday afternoon, my wife comes out of the door from the house into the garage, and she started giving me my drill again. And I still don't know where this wallet is. The only thing I have this, hold on, I have this picture still, that was at the back of my car. So, I went in the house, and the next thing, I was being called, and I had something that looked like this. Here's your wallet. Now, how my wallet got into this black bag that I didn't have Sunday, so obviously I didn't have my wallet Sunday morning. But you know, there was never a panic.
That was a test, bro.
There was never a panic.
Yeah.
It's like, Lord, I know what you've done for me before with little stupid white golf balls that you helped me find. And I know that you'll help me find his wallet.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Well, that's the part of a man seeking God that David's talking about. Right? First one he talked about was inner satisfaction. Second was inner joy. Third item is inner stability and strength. Inner stability and strength. And verse 7 and 8 really speaks to that, because it says, "For you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I sing for joy. My soul clings to you, for your right hand upholds me." Now that's a person who, yeah, I mean, he knows I'm covered. I mean, under the wings, that conjures up the picture of a hen protecting her chickens, right? Have you ever seen that?
Yes.
That's an incredible sight, isn't it? Now, what is this hen gonna do? But it doesn't matter, she's ready to sacrifice her life.
You know, when you read this stuff, you realize why David is a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
Because with all the things that he did, wrong,
Mhm.
he still had this inner, he knew,
Yeah.
from a long time when he fought Goliath, in the beginning, and he just, we go through, we see more and more. This is why, because he still knows, he knows.
Yeah, he knows.
who his God is.
That's right. That's right. He knew that God would forgive him
Yes.
and wouldn't eliminate what he'd done and the price he's gonna have to pay for what he did. But he knew that he could get in right standing with God, right? And the other thing that's amazing, a word that jumps out at me in this is cling. My soul clings to you. That's a passionate kind of word, isn't it? That's more than just holding on. I mean, that's one of those that, you got to beat me off. I'm not letting go.
You think about kids who cling to their parents'
Yes.
feet. Oh, she's trying to get rid of them and they just hold it hanging on and drag them. Yeah, I've been there.
Their source and just kind of takes over with
Yeah.
that clinginess.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful word. And David he's pouring out his heart, right? If you're going to be seeking after God, which is what he says is your first priority, you got to know him in such a way that this is what is going on inside of you. These are the characteristics that you should be developing. And then the last thing, go ahead,
No,
Sam.
go ahead.
Yeah, the last thing is that this person has to have an inner perspective and balance, which takes us to verses 9 through 11. David was not consumed with thought of getting even. He knew he had enemies out there, and I think back in my BC days, getting even was, no, you ain't getting away with that. Right? Now, there's a price that you're going to have to pay. David is saying,
I still get that sometimes.
right. You gotta catch yourself. Yeah, that's why God's given us, 10 seconds of grace. Let us get through that moment and then get it right.
I can remember after Tony was sentenced and like about the prosecuting lawyer, and I thought, okay, he lives in Northern Virginia. His kids are gonna come through the Fairfax County school system. I'm gonna get, well, yeah. For a long time, that was my thinking. You know,
I bet.
wait till they come through.
I'll take that. Yeah, I mean, those are natural human instincts, right?
And now it's like the chicken, the mother hen protecting her chicks.
Yeah.
That's a whole concept again, no matter what, you're gonna
Yeah,
protect.
that's right, that's right.
Kinda negative, but.
Yeah. And one thing about those chicks, even at that young, they know where to go from.
Yeah.
Exactly where to go.
They do, they know right now.
I mean, they chirping and going on, but they head right for mom. That's where we are with God. And that's what David is saying, you need to run to him. And he's there to protect you. Yes, sir.
There's also like a lot of this nonsense we're dealing with right now, that our leader in the White House is starting a lot of divisiveness and all that. I think about what brother saying about being centered and focused, and Sister Bonds and God got it. We, like those chicks, have to, at this point, because we gotta run to God, understand that you know how this is gonna end up. We gotta put all our trust and faith in you, that this is gonna work out, this is part of a plan
Yeah.
we have.
Yeah.
And just remain faithful, in spite of the challenges that we're facing.
Yeah. And expectant about the destination that's ultimately going to be yours.
Yeah.
In that situation and beyond, and we'll see in this next part that David he's focused on the destination. That's what's able to keep him balanced. Somebody read 9 through 11.
They who seek my life will be destroyed. They will go down in the depth of the earth. They will be given over to the sword and become food for jackals. But the king will rejoice in God. All who swear by God's name will praise him, while the mouths of liars will be silenced.
Now, some folks say that's another one of those purgatory prayers, Eric.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But you notice, he's not praying that happens to these guys. He's saying, this is what I know God is capable of doing. Right? And at verse 9 and 10 said, release your enemies to God. People doing you wrong and laying traps for you. Turn them over, God. Don't try to resolve it yourself, even in the business world, if they're trying to trip you up. I mean, I certainly went through it. Folks get jealous of what you're doing and where you're going and all this kind of stuff. Want what you got. Turn them over to God. Next thing he says is rejoice in your deliverance that God is going to work out. Get that joy inside of you now. Because you know that all things work together. The good of those, right? Loved and called what?
According to his purpose.
I have to confess in my Christian walk, that's a goal line I haven't crossed yet. I'm at the 5-yard line. I subscribe to the Kennedy solution that says, forgive your enemies, but remember their names. I forgive them, and I've tried my best to stay in the Word. but I remember that name. And I just have to be honest, you just have to be honest. about
Sure,
it. It's,
sure.
It's not like remembering your history so that you don't repeat it, because it will do something to that extent.
Yeah.
Just remember your history.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
And it's all a growth process,
Yes.
you know, where I'm blessed not only to have the word, but have a beautiful role model at home who is better at it than I am.
Yeah.
I laughed when you talked about you losing your wallet. You know, and, my wife would pray over the loss of a penny, you know? The Lord will take me to where it is. And I'm saying, it's a penny, let it go. Lost your wallet, pray over, I'm calling American Express. But between leadership like Lou and the Word and some role models, I'm getting there.
Oh, that's great, that's great. And the thing that kept David on track, I think, as we said before, is that he paid attention to not so much that he was locked and lost in the desert, but what he knew and realized that God was going to do for him. And so he focused in on that destination as being his next stop. The more sweat you put into being with God in this life, the greater your excitement ought to be about your final destination. Right?
Amen.
Because you're storing up blessings and joy there.
Amen.
And so that ought to be part of the joy that you feel right now. Is that one day soon you'll hear him say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And as you know, when you look in 2 Samuel 18, verses 1 through 18 and verse 28, the revolt that sent David to the desert ended in a serious battle where 20,000 people lost their lives. 20,000 of the enemy, including the death of Absalom. So what he was saying back then, in terms of what he knew that God was going to do, it finally manifested itself. David mourned the death of his son, but he gave God all the credit and the blessing for what he had done. And he rejoiced in it. So what are our lessons for today about life? And it's kind of the same thing we talked about last week. At the beginning of the day, we should do what?
Pray.
Engage God. That's right. Seek him out. Beginning of the day. And this particular song was written for that purpose. The Eastern Orthodox Church, they work it into the liturgy of their church every morning. The 63rd Psalm. Because it's also called the Psalm of the Morning. It's an important piece. You know, it's difficult for us perhaps to engage it as we just casually reading through Psalm. But we've experienced something really great.
Amen.
We must also resign our fate into the hands of God. Even if you knew what was going to happen tomorrow, you couldn't do anything about it. Third thing is we must rejoice in the Lord in spite of our circumstance.
Amen.
Fourth thing is we must have faith that God will vindicate his children and set things straight. You've probably seen it in your life. I've certainly seen it in mine. And then the last thing is we must continue to seek him at every opportunity. You know, every moment of the day, there's a chance for us to seek after God. you know, if it's no more than a thought, there's an opportunity for us, right? 7:05, did I miss anything?
No.
Oh, my
I wanted to share one thing with you, if you
Okay.
all bear with me, because it talks about what we're doing.
Okay.
My granddaddy said it all the time. He said, I met God in the morning when my day was at its best.
Mm.
And his presence came like glory, like a sunrise on my chest.
Mm.
Now, I think I know the story.
Praise God.
Learn from many a troubled way. If you want God, if you meet God in the morning, he'll be with you throughout the day.
Amen.
And that was his story.
Yeah, yeah. That's-
And as a kid, when he got ready to stand up and was gonna say it, I kind of
Yeah.
went right along
I can
with
see
it.
it still touching.
And it touches my heart because he left it with me.
Yeah, praise God.
And last week, that's what we talked about, the meaning of sunrise
Mhm.
and how that all came about.
Mhm.
That years and years and years ago, it was believed that if we can get started with prayer and putting God first and on our heart, we knew what the word was,
Mhm.
that the rest of that day and certainly the rest of that week is fine, and you come back and you get renourished again. And so sunrise has just evolved from that whole philosophy of understanding how if you wake up in the morning with God.
And you seek God
And you seek
in the
Him,
morning, and you go back to seeking,
Right.
then he'll be
He's
with you.
with you all
He'll
day.
cling, you cling to him, and he'll be with you throughout the
Yeah.
day. And it has just meant all my life, and I probably was 5 or 6 years old
Mhm.
when he started with that at
Yeah.
church. And I thought, I took it with me.
Yeah, that's great. That's a wonderful gift.
It is.
I
Yes,
have,
ma'am.
I have a praise report for my daughter. I don't want to make this long, but she's an administrator in Prince William County in charge of special ed. She called and we'll continue, she's 44.
Okay.
We continue to teach our children about prayer.
Okay.
But sometimes they go straight to crying and falling out. And so, she called me, she was crying and falling out. Jim and I were sitting at the computer getting ready to go home for the funeral.
Mhm.
And she's screaming and crying. And the first thing we said, calm down.
Mhm.
We need to pray. We don't know what this is about,
Yeah.
but we need to pray before we even know
Yeah.
what this is about. And we did. And she calmed down and we prayed. Then she told us a story that she had went out to get her bag out of her car on the way to school. Someone had broken into her car, stole all of her Prince William County stuff. She's special ed, a lot of confidential stuff going on in her bag. So she didn't know what to do. So step by step, Jim told her what she needed to do. We're gonna pray, call the police, call school, tell them to cut off all your stuff, your badges and everything, because you got stuff out there that's floating and you don't want that. And then go walk the neighborhood to see if someone just threw your bag out after they take what they want, just
Yeah.
go.
Toss it.
So she did all that. We called her back. We were on our way home to the funeral, and about an hour or so later, she had calmed down. And she said, I'm gonna sit here and just wait. And I said, we're gonna wait, and we're gonna pray together. You pray at home, we're praying while we're going home.
Mhm.
Well, we got to the funeral, everything went well, and all of a sudden, we see Karen walking with her phone up in the air like this. And we said, well, she said, "Let everybody gather," she said, because I want to show you what God can do. And I'm like, oh, Lord. Well, so she held up her phone. She said, I just got a text from my friend who said that we found a bag from Prince William County Schools, and it looks as if it was found at the Motel 6 in outside the door in Woodbridge, and the man looked at your tag, was in the car, in the bag. He looked at you, looked up on Facebook, matched your picture, called the friend that he knew from Prince William County. She called Karen, and there it was on the phone, all of this had happened. He said he will meet you tomorrow to get your bag. The only thing they took out of it was her iPad. Everything else was there. And the iPad, of course, is on the cloud, so Prince William can get all of that information.
Yeah.
But it's all there. Boy, does she know prayer now.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I was kind of like a drummer, cause I was kind of picking off the ball, but I didn't let anybody know it. But Jean was calm the whole time. From the
Yeah.
very moment, she said to Karen, "You gonna find your bag.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that stuff. It's in your bag." That's confident. So they're gonna get that. Don't want that. So
Thank you.
Praise God.
No, I got a praise report I just want to share with
Okay.
you. Most people know that my daughter Tony and Michelle Obama were classmates at Princeton, in fact, roommates, very close friends. And then for the last 8 years, because Tony was CEO of a high-tech company that had government contracts, and because Michelle was who she was, they had to purposely avoid each other. Okay? Not even phone calls at the White House. Well, I got a photo I'm going to share around the table of the women, with women in particular, because Michelle was a keynote speaker at a Microsoft conference down in Florida, and they got to have a class of '85 reunion between the two of them, and she sent me this photo. And what I see about the photo is how beautiful and relaxed Michelle looks. And I thought back in my little experience in life, even when I had small positions of authority, how much pressure was on my wife. And what this young lady had to endure for 8 years. And to see her look this pretty, look this relaxed, and change the hair color, and then you ladies all pictures. I just said amen. I mean, it's just with what we're going through now, to see this couple have survived all of that for 8 years. I just pass this picture around, and particularly for her. Because she just looks.
Which
one is Michelle?
Which one is Michelle? Which one is Michelle?
My daughter's pretty.
She looks younger.
It's glad my heart.
So much younger.
She has to.
Wow. Oh, wow. Both of them are beautiful.
Talk about pressure. So, all minds clear?